transforming lives. Your transformation starts here.
Hey, what is happening? Welcome to Transforming Lives podcast. I am your host, Tony Kimble. And it's a pleasure that you took the time to stop by for today's episode, right? So here's our goal. Transforming Lives spotlights educational leaders who are driving worldwide change. And we're going to have candid conversations. And, from this show, what we're going to do is you're going to reveal, how did transformation happen for those in their lives? And they're going to share key principles that help them move forward with their success. And basically what's going to happen is you're going to hear be inspired, being an empowered educator with some equitable, actionable change. All right, guys. So it's no different. Last week, my last episode, I had Dr. Daryl Henson on that dropped some fire for us about how to change a school district. When we think about it from the top, there are several things that need to happen and to ensure that the school district change. Go ahead and check out that episode. It's up on YouTube and all the different podcast platforms. Now, when you talk about it from a superintendent's perspective, also you have to look at it from an administrator, a principal's perspective. So when we talk about when I started as 50 educators in 50 states, and you're looking for people, and the thing about a podcast, and you want to be relevant, you don't want to just, I just want to go to find 50 people to bring on. You definitely want to make sure that you're listening and making sure that they are in line with what you see your particular platform moving into. Well, my next guest, when you talk about LinkedIn, it's this professional, all stuffy platform where people get on and they show off all their accolades and I am so-and-so and all. So really you have to move that stuff away and really listen to the people that you're connecting to. My next guest was one that I kind of looked around and I was like, okay, all right. Crystal Watson. Let me find out what's going on with her. And I happened to see that she was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. And I said, you know what? I got on the podcast and I listened and I said, you know what? This is it. It's certain things you hear from a person and you hear it and, it goes to your ear, but you hear transformation. You hear people being authentic. You hear people just having that desire to see change, not just in their lives, but change in other people's lives. And they've gone through changes. That was my next guest. When I reached out to her and I said, you know what, I'm gonna try it out. If she says no, all right, I'm just gonna move on. So let me do things right and introduce my next guest that's coming on the platform. She is from Cincinnati, and I'm gonna do right. Okay, I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I'm gonna do right today. I'm glad Pittsburgh won. So let me get to the nitty-gritty. Crystal M. Watson is an innovative, passionate, authentic mathematics educator, lifelong learner who you can count on always to ask, what do the students think? That's what I love about it. Her work is centered around providing space for vocal and identity development in order for everyone, particularly those marginalized, to experience high quality, yes, deep and personal mathematics. Crystal, alongside other scholars, to develop cultural, responsive, reflective, and anti-racist curriculum resources centered around young people in every lesson. That introduction just sold me already, all right? So I want to introduce to you all my next guest, Crystal Watson. Crystal, what's up? We want to hit that mute button. You said some good stuff.
I don't like ugly. I was about to get on you for about the Steelers, but
God knows. God knows.
But I really don't care about sports. So you can like whoever you want. As long as we're good on the Ohio State Buckeyes, everybody else is up for debate. You got something to say about that too?
Huh?
You got something to say about the Bucks too?
Well, I don't have anything to say. I don't have the score, but I'm actually a Michigan fan.
Okay. Podcast over. Goodbye.
Right. I said, you know what she did just say? She's an Ohio State fan. But
Lord have mercy. It's all good.
Weather in Cincinnati.
Freezing. Okay. Freezing. But okay. Well, I mean, good thing you're brilliant. I mean, that's at least you have that going for you.
Right. Well, thank you for that. So I'm going to stop because I will go all day about that rivalry, but I'm going to stop and I'm going to be professional. But welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, cool. Yep. So when we talk about mathematics, I love it. My background is in math. And, you know, earlier I was able to listen to a podcast. When we were on the podcast, and I listened to it. I was like, yeah, this is it. It's just a difference. It's not like, well, math is new. It's just that culture that you have in a classroom that makes it different. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, me too.
So let me start out by asking you this question. You know, what inspired you to get into education?
Oh, wait. So just a little bit of background. I was not an education major. I went to college for criminal justice and psychology. I have a double bachelor's. Oh. And my first master's was in criminology. I thought what I was going to do was be a prison psychologist. I wanted to uproot the prison system. I wanted to shine light on how we mistreat folks with mental illnesses within our penal system. And that was not where I landed because I was in corporate America, just at a call center, right? Trying to just pay my little bills while I was in college.
Right.
And they kept promoting me. So next thing I knew, I was making all this money and I'm like, I'm not going back to criminal justice money. What do you mean? Like, I'm going to stay here. So I stayed and I was there for about 10 to 12 years, somewhere around there, in between there. And I fell into this deep depression. And I was like, why am I so depressed? Like I'm buying a house, like I'm doing all these things that I never saw done when I was a kid. Yeah. So I should be happy, right? Yeah. I was so depressed and I just had to take a moment to reflect and say, this is not what I care about. I don't care. I always wanted to be in some sort of like human services, social services, something like that. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. I don't care about how much I'm billing a client. I don't care about how much, whatever. It's just not something I care about. So for me, it was about finding what I cared about. So I went back to like thinking about myself as a child, right? Yeah. Thinking about what did I do when I was a kid and I envisioned myself doing something. And I envisioned myself with all my little stuffed animals, all over lined up, telling them to do their homework. And I was like, okay, I need to be a teacher. I need to figure that out. So I took the leap. I live next to one of our state senators and Mr. Cecil Thomas. Okay. And Mr. Thomas was like, why don't you do it? Like, really? I'm like, I'm old. I'm old. He was like, you're never too old and we need you. Right. Yeah. So I was like, okay, Teach for America, here I come. Even though I had heard all the bad things about them, but I was like, it's going to be my vehicle. So that's how I got there.
Wow. So that was not your typical, let's talk to Siri and let's get to a certain town. It was not a straight path, right? So okay, so let me collect myself for a moment. All right, let me get back here. So your first thoughts were to go in and change a system, a tough system, but then you went in another direction to another system that is
actually feeding that system. So the system that I moved to is actually feeding the system that I was going to start with. So it was almost like going back to where the roots are, right?
Right. Yeah.
How can I affect the prison system at the roots? And it really starts with education. So I was like, oh, it's a no-brainer at this point, you know?
Right. And being that advocate early, because sometimes we catch them at that latter stages, and it's like, well, my mind's already made up, and this is what from 3 to 8, this is what I know. From 8 to 16, this is what I know. And it's hard to break that mindset at those particular times because this is what I'm used to, right?
Yep.
It's tough sometimes. So kudos for you on making that change. We appreciate you making that change. So, you know, when you start thinking, when you see the power of mathematics, so we're gonna get into the math, you know, not pushing away from, you know, from that where you started from and where you moved to. I want to jump into the math. So what did you start to see the power of math? What made you fall in love with the math?
So I'm going to start with the falling in love with math, and then I'll go to the power, right? Okay. Because I think that they are connected. I know they're connected. And it starts with a confession. Okay. I'm not in love with math. I've never fell in love with math.
Oh, it's not.
I know, right? And people are like, what? Because I'm a math girl. I am your math girl. I fell in love with the possibilities that math brings to folks that look like me. Oh, that's what I fell in love with.
Yeah.
So when I came to interview with Cincinnati Public Schools, I've never worked in another district. It's where my kid goes to school. It's where I live and pay taxes. So Cincinnati Public, it was never a question for me on where I would be. That's just, it's always been Cincinnati Public.
Yeah.
So when I came to interview, I say this on every podcast, Tony Kimble, she is now the director of all curriculum in the district. She interviewed me and she was like, we need you to teach math. And I was like, what? I'll teach anything but math. Why do you want me to teach math? I tested into remedial math in college. Like, you don't want me to teach math? And she was like, no, you will be amazing. And kids need to see you. And you'll understand like the misconceptions and the ways that kids think that struggle with math. And I was like, all right, whatever, universe, if this is you talking to me, so I'm going to go ahead and do what I need to do. So I started teaching math and I started to fall deeply in, I think it was more about finding my imagination through math and seeing that there's like infinite ways to use your imagination in math, right?
Yeah.
So then that was the power of math for me. But then I saw the power of math and I still see it as a principal now. I see it with my babies in my school. I've seen it in the classroom. I've seen it as a coach in other classrooms.
Yeah.
Where, and it sounds so cliche, but where the babies they have so much genius that it's stifled when we ask them to do something with just one strategy. But when we open it up and say, tell me what you think, the things that they come up with, the drawings, the models, the way that they explain things. I learned area models from a 7th grader. I was teaching 7th and 8th grade math, and they were like, Miss Watson, I use an area model to do this. And I was like, what's an area model? Because I wasn't taught that way.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you.
And I said, come up here and teach us what an area model is. And now I'm an area model girl. Like, I use area models all the time, even in real life. And that's what the power is to me. Like, it's a communication style. It's a language. It's a tool for liberation, right? For our families. That's how we're going to get to generational wealth. That's how we're going to get to, generations after generations after generations being college educated, or, in a skilled trade, by seeing the mathematics within the world.
Right. Yeah. I just want to stop right here and have this conversation, the whole podcast about this, because when you talk about the part of being liberated, I can agree with you. I'm a grown man sitting in a professional development during the summer where I wanted to go coach football, coach my guys and get them prepared for football. But I'm sitting in a 2-week long college master's mathematics professional development. And I'm asking, why am I here? I'm here to get this money so I can have some money during the summer.
Okay.
But it changed my life because, like you, it's like I used to be to sit in your seat. All right, this person answered this question. Oh, no, you don't say anything. And it was like, this is what happens in the real world. We don't open up the possibilities for them. So to hear what you're talking about, where you see children blossom. I'm a grown man. I didn't learn about the area model till later on in my teaching career.
Okay.
Mathematics. My background is in mathematics.
I'm telling you, kids are brilliant. Kids are brilliant. I was with my little cousin. She's in kindergarten over the Thanksgiving break, right? She was visiting. This is a quick story. She was like, can you take me to Target? I have $20 to spend. And I was like, yeah, girl, let's go. So I take her to Target. She's looking at stuff. She was like, how many toys can I get? And I said, well, it depends on how much they cost. So she was like, okay, well, I want these two. And I was like, well, if you can tell me how much this toy is going to cost and how much money you're going to be left over, I'll give you $10 more and you'll be able to get both. This little girl took my hands and made me go like this and used her hands so that we had 20. And she subtracted that little $14 that her one toy was, because it was 30% off of $20.
Yep.
And she subtracted the 6 and she goes, 14. I said, oh, girl, you just got another $10. Get both them toys. She's 5.
Yeah. And you think of the progression of the world.
Yeah.
You know, even I'm gonna say you were at Target, even when that where they can apply the math instead of learning the algorithm to it. That was a real world example where they took a strategy and actually applied it. Man, me want to give her $5 or $10 now, because it's like when you see that applied outside the classroom, not on the paper, but now you're using this in the real world sense.
Yes, my little Legacy, that's my girl. Legacy is brilliant.
Perfect name. And we got P. Hawkins saying falling in love with the possibility.
That's my girl, Phoenicia.
Okay, Phoenicia. Okay, what's up, Phoenicia? How you doing? Thank you for stepping on for a moment. So hearing that, I'm just bubbling inside, because it's more than just getting a grade for a class, is providing inspiration in such a way. So I can hear it in your voice, but I'm going to go to the next question I'm asking you. What motivated you to step into the leadership role in education?
It's funny because when I started, anybody asked me, they said, where do you want to go next? And I'm like, I just want to teach. Like, I just want to be in the classroom. I want to teach. I want to retire from the classroom. And then I started to think, I had one student, his name is Lantes. I talk about Lantes a lot because Lantes has superseded my expectations. He is an amazing young man now. And he said something really profound to me in class one day. He was like, teachers expect us to come to school and be positive, but they don't bring us that same energy.
Ooh.
Right. And it stuck with me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, we're humans as teachers, right? But then I started to think, like, what impacts a teacher's overall mood or vibe for a day? And I'm like, our leaders, right? And I've never been a quiet teacher. Like, I just never have. Shout out to Mr. Lewis. He was my first principal, my only principal. And he put up with a lot with me. We would go toe to toe on a lot of things, but that's my brother. I love him. And I learned so much from him, but I've never been a quiet teacher. But I thought that I would just be loud from my classroom for so long. But when my baby started to say stuff like that to me, I was like, yo, I could be that person that could just motivate other teachers just to do their thing. Right. Yeah. And I was only in the classroom for 5 years. So I was like, I'm not ready to go to principalship yet. I want to go to something in between. So then, full transparency, CPS, Cincinnati Public Schools, and Teach for America had this opportunity for a fellowship to go to Columbia Teachers College.
Right.
They chose 2 people. We had to go through 50 million interviews, but I was chosen along with my friend Dean, and we got to go to Columbia to get a second master's and our principal licensure for free. Books included, everything.
Free.
For the free 99.
Free, I love it.
Yes. Books included, all of that, right? So I was like, oh, yes, absolutely. I'm going. The caveat was, when I returned, I had to be in a leadership role for at least 4 years after that. So staying in the classroom was not an option if I wanted to do this free 99. Now, this is coming from a girl with a mom with a 7th grade education. You offered me Ivy League, I'm out. I gotta go.
Yeah.
I gotta go. It was just an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So when I got back, I had an opportunity to be an assistant principal or to be a math coach. And I said, I want to experience coaching teachers in a non-evaluative way first, to kind of find my niche, to see how I will do it, how I would lead a school. So I was a math coach under Dr. Don Williams, the best math leader ever. And I've just been led by a lot of Black, powerful women, from my superintendent down. And other than Emily Campbell, I mean, she's a powerful white woman. Hi, Emily. But she, I've been led by all these wonderful people. And it's just been, that's how I got into leadership, honestly, was I wanted to see all the facets of the system. So I knew what was working and what wasn't and how to dismantle it so that we could reimagine and rebuild.
Oh man, this is a lot of it's a lot of information packed in this short time that we've been on this podcast because one thing is that as a leader, when you're a leader, leadership is influence, no more, no less. Even my brief time just having this conversation, you're a leader. I can and you can know a leader based on you don't take the credit. You give the shout outs to those that help you through your process. A lot of times we hear sometimes in music where I was self-made. Well, I wasn't self-made.
Work.
Right.
This work is collective. Yeah, there is it's a we, it's a us. I told my friend Phoenicia that today. Just in conversation talking about something else. I'm like, this is a we, this is a us. This is not a I. My kids just took their math iReady winter diagnostic, and my 3rd and 6th graders showed up and showed out. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
And I've been pushing my teachers hard. And this is my first year as a principal, and it was new to everyone. Yeah. And my 3rd and 6th graders turned up, I'm telling you. But the first thing I did was say, amazing job, teachers. Amazing job, math specialist. Amazing job, my intervention specialist. Because guess who's with them kids all day, every day when I'm getting pulled in a million directions? I might be giving you support based on what you need in order to support the babies, but you did it. You did the work.
Right. And that's a leader where you're bringing this team together where you're bringing dynamic people, even if someone may be struggling in the area. The thing about a team is that, you're as strong as your weakest link. But I have to kind of paint over that a little better by saying that as a team, when you start doing things collectively, you really don't know where that weak link is because the leader finds a way to make that happen to where they grow. It may take them a little while, but they're growing and they're confident in what they do. Man, I'm loving this.
Facts.
I'm loving this conversation because one part you said a little earlier concerning one of your students. I want to make sure I get that person's name right. The young man that you said.
Lantes.
That messed me up because in many cases, teacher would take that as disrespect, but that was real talk.
And my kids knew they could come to me with anything. Like they asked me to start a club called Life so they could stay after school and talk about real life with me and get advice. Like, because they knew that we could chop it up about anything. Now, always I had good relationships with parents. So like if they were being hurt or somebody was hurting them, of course, mandated reporting, all that, stuff. But if they just wanted advice on how to get through emotions with a breakup or whatever, they're 7th and 8th graders. It's a village. It's everybody.
Yeah. And a lot of times having those tools, we don't get those. And we grow up and become adults and we can't have a civilized conversation because we're missing some of those tools, which in return, yeah, Crystal. Yeah. So when I think about, math education, you talk about, you supporting it culturally and being equitable.
Ooh.
How has your approach, you talked about you in the classroom for a short amount of time. Who cares? That doesn't matter. Because sometimes you can sit in a place and outgrow it and stay there and become frustrated. But that's another podcast. All right. So how has your approach to teaching and leadership evolved over time?
Oh my gosh. I just want to acknowledge that I've caused harm. And any educator that says that they have not caused harm are lying to themselves and others. I've caused harm to students. As much as I loved them and I wanted the best for them, there were times when I made them feel bad because they got things wrong, or I was upset because homework wasn't turned in, or I told them that they should have known something. You should know this because it's third grade or whatever. There are many things that I've done that have caused harm. And once I acknowledged that, I was able to grow. And I feel like that's truly how we become equitable, right? And we start to become anti-racist. We start to become equitable is when we acknowledge that we're all steeped in all covered in this smog that is white supremacy, that is inequity, that is all of these things. And we acknowledge the roles that we play to perpetuate those things, and then we find ways to break those things down. Yeah. And for me, it was finding community. It was about, so my hip hop ed folks, I can't even tell you how much I love Dr. Emden, Tim, Jaddy, Yoli, like all of them. Folks that get paid way more than me to say more than me and still are the most humble people and I can call on for anything at this moment. They helped me break a lot of that down. Understanding what I was perpetuating, the things that I carried. I'm a mixed girl. So my mom is white and my dad was not around. So I was raised colorblind. That's not helpful. Yeah. So, I went into the classroom thinking, oh, I look like my kids. So we already got things going and I'm going to be equitable. No, ma'am, you are not. Just because you look like them doesn't mean that you understand what they go through or what they don't go through. Don't assume that they're going through things, right? But it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be equitable and anti-racist because you look like them. So it took for me to excavate myself, in the words of Yoli Celie Ruiz, is I had to really do some deep searching and thinking about the ways that I was socialized and the ways that it was showing up in the classroom through colorism, through sexism, all of those things. And that's, it came out to be, and it has now developed into this deep love that I have for like Black girls. My Black girls, that's what all my doctoral work is about. It's about Black girls in mathematics and their imaginations and how their creativity is stifled through, the perpetuation of teachers thinking that cultural expressions are disrespect. So if I'm rolling my neck or if I'm smacking my lips, then I'm being disrespectful. And it's like, no, that's cultural. And if you understand that, then you stop that pipeline and you stop that push out, like Morris says, right? So to me, my leadership has evolved and it's still evolving. I have not arrived. I still cause harm. But the part that makes me kind of step back and be okay with my own growth and the growth that I see in others is the ability to admit it and the ability to apologize, even to children. I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I'm sorry that I made that decision. I'm sorry that I did that. Last year, I called a boy out in the middle of lunch in front of all his friends, and he cussed me out. Now he had to go home for the day, but when he came back, I sat him down and I said, "What made you do that?" And he was like, "Well, you called me out in front of my boys." Like, I was like, "Dang, I'm sorry I did that. My apologies."
So we're not going to skip over. Yeah, I'm not even worried about this time. I don't know what time, because what you just pointed out, my mother-in-law, Diane Freeland Foster, was one of the first African-American female mayors in Mississippi. She was the
Come
first mayor
on, mother-in-law.
Grenada, Mississippi. And as you're talking, I'm hearing her,
Oh,
because what it is, and I had to learn that too, even from the standpoint of apologizing, because you're like, okay, I'm X age and you're X age. No, that's not happening. But what happens is you contribute to the harm in their lives, and you really don't realize it, and they think that you're doing a justice for them, and it's an injustice. Because here's what I face a lot. I travel around to different schools, and in many cases, and I didn't realize it, I was the first, in many cases, or the only Black male math teacher they had. And it was like, I go to work, I do my job, but they needed something a little bit different, and it wasn't connected to the curriculum. It was connected of saying, I'm proud of you.
ooh.
No, you can't do this, or you do this, or you made a mistake. Okay, don't turn this in. I need you to turn this in again, and I need your best effort. I don't care. Give me your best effort. And just those words of affirmation where you're like, okay, this is not going to be on my lesson plan, but I have to do this to build their confidence up. Yeah, so you got me involved in this conversation, because we all need to have this conversation to have an impact. Because here's what happens. It may be 10 years down the line, and you were that person that had that impact that made them think different.
Yep.
Whew. Yeah.
Yep. And I don't need anybody to tell me that it was me. I like to see my babies exceed. So last year we had a situation where, not last year, the year before, we had a situation where we had kind of a big call out of a bunch of teachers at a high school. And a lot of my students went to that high school. I walk in to teach Algebra 2 for the day, and two of my favorites, Lantez being one of them, and then Jalen being the other, were in the class, and they were like, Miss Watson, what are you doing here? They were like, Miss Watson, I'm graduating on time. That is what I want to hear.
Right. Yeah.
I don't need to hear you did this or you were the best. I want to hear I'm graduating on time. I'm doing this. These are my goals. This is what I got planned. I'm going to be an electrician. I'm going to go. Lantez is running track in college now. He's got his pharmacy tech license. Like I'm telling you.
Lantez, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's what gets me. But I do want to say thank you for likening me to our elder, Ms. Diane. That is a true compliment to me. If I'm speaking in a way that makes you visualize your mother-in-law, that's also affirmation for me. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, we have to have these conversations. Your girl is on here. If I had the link, I probably would bring her on right now, because this conversation is, in my mind, is fire. Building a culture of breaking, absolutely, apprehensions. Yeah, and that's important, where a lot of times we think it's the math, but if a kid doesn't recognize that you care about them, you can wipe it away. You can forget about it.
Every time.
Yeah. So, oh man. So we have to get into some principles, some practicalities when it comes to, when we look at this whole idea of transformation. This is Transforming Lives podcast. It started on this whole idea of transforming and not conforming. So, what principles or strategies have you used to, engage your students? Feel free, even though I got the question there, you have free reign. All right. I got a question there to kind of guide us, but, provide some examples for us, and how transformation happened for you in your classroom from a teacher standpoint, administrator. You got it.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'll start with teacher. So when I was in the classroom, every Friday was Feedback Friday. And my students would be like, what? Feedback Friday? What do you mean? And I'd be like, well, I want to know what helped you learn this week. What did I do that didn't help you learn? What do you need more of or less of? Or what do you want to change? those types of things, right? So I did things called plus deltas with like different Post-it notes. I used Pear Deck for them to give me feedback. There's all different types of ways that I got feedback from them.
Yeah.
And I implemented the feedback. So if I had a large amount of students that said, for instance, I took away homework I made homework optional. So it didn't hurt you if you didn't do it, but you would get a grade if you did do it, because we had quizzes every Friday. So you'd want to do it because you want practice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But then the students were like, we want more homework. What? I took away homework. You want more homework. So what did I do? I did homework, but I did leveled homework. So what I did was I had 4 classes. And let me just tell you, like, it took a long time, but anybody that wants it, please email me, whatever. I will send it to you, 7th and 8th grade. I took the major works of the grade and I made 4 different homeworks for each class. So it was mostly algorithmic because I didn't want them to be at home struggling. I wanted them to be able to, you know what I mean? Yeah. The deep work happened in the classroom, just kind of like the algorithm and the fluency would be at home.
Yeah.
So the homework was leveled. So the student got to choose which homework looked like what they needed to work on.
Right. Sure.
So they'd be like, oh, I need this one this week, or I need this one this week. I need this one this week. And it was a little, 2 to 4 pages of just different things. Right. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing that I did. And when I did do the feedback Fridays, when I did implement the change, I always spoke out who told me that was what they needed, and it was being implemented. So, this week, Talia told me that she wanted more homework. So guys, I've got some extra homework. So any of you that feel like Talia, you have homework up here that you can get extra. There were times where they told me you yelled twice this week, because I didn't yell a whole lot. I talk loud, but I don't yell at kids very often. Yeah. And they were like, you yelled twice. And it made me feel like I couldn't make a mistake. So guess what? The next week, y'all, I don't know when I yelled. It wasn't intentional. I'm sorry. Yeah. In the moment when that happens, if somebody could check me respectfully, like, hey, Miss Watson, you're yelling.
Yeah.
Right. So giving them permission to advocate for themselves. And then the other thing that we did was we developed a culture of mistake making. So I was not worried about whether you got it right or wrong, unless we were testing something or it was like a summative assessment, which didn't happen very often because I wanted my kids to always feel like they were growing and learning. Mm-hmm. You could get it wrong, and let's talk about it. So there were times where I didn't have many kids that refused to come up to the board, because they knew if they came up to the board to solve something and they got stuck, they could phone a friend.
Yeah.
I'd be like, phone a friend, y'all, phone a friend. And their friend would come up and I'd be like, don't give them the answer, coach them to the next step. Right.
I love it. It's building leaders, because again, it's one thing about education that we really overlook. Our product is the children. So why not hear? Why not hear from the product to find out what's really going on instead of waiting at the end? I heard this example used for formative assessment, talking about assessments. Formative assessments are like a chef tasting the food before it goes out onto the into the kitchen. And a lot of times we don't, be careful with your words, Tony. All right. Sometimes there is a drifting away from not tasting it before it goes out, and everybody tastes the particular food, and you're like, oh, then they write a review on YouTube or write a review on Google. Oh, this food is not. So tasting the food beforehand and really having a conversation with yourself to say, this needs a little bit more whatever ingredient. So, oh, I love it. I love it. That's how you build that student, that whole student. So yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love that. Ooh.
And like you said, Tony, so like as a leader, getting my teachers to really understand that piece. Now, I have a great group of teachers. Shout out to Rockdale Academy in Cincinnati, Ohio. Rockdale is going up. We about to be a school of choice market. But anyway, I have a great group of teachers. but we have a lot of things that they do in the classroom every single day. So sometimes you're like, they're formative assessments, they're doing them, but they're not always top of mind. Summative assessments, sometimes they're just like, okay, let's get to the diagnostic, because we test kids like a million times a year. Absolutely. So now we're really working on more strategically giving small tests every couple weeks and tracking that growth. And I'm pushing a couple teachers just as a pilot to have the students track their own growth to see if there's, and I know there's going to be a difference because I did it, but they got to try it first, right? To have the kids have their own spreadsheet to say, yep, this is the skill that I need to learn. I learned it, or I need more practice, or I don't know what I'm doing. Right. And then hand that into the teacher, or the teacher walks around and sees it every week and says, okay, now I know what my tier 2 strategy needs to look like next week. Right. Instead of guessing, the teacher shouldn't have to do all the work. Let the kids do some of the work.
That works so well because the students take ownership.
Yes.
So it's no longer having just I can statements in or whatever the language is on the board. The students know, okay, we're talking about rational numbers. This is what happens with rational numbers. And then also, this is what I made on the last assessment. And then they're asking, can I get a little bit more help? Like all of this stuff is interwoven together where now it's not, well, I ain't gonna do Mr. Kimble's work. I'm just not gonna do, no, it's my work. And I want to show what I know. That ownership, please don't get me talking. You got me excited again because
we got to do this again because we can talk more.
Yeah, for sure. That's going to be powerful because if they know, instead of looking at just the grade book, they're looking at, all right, well, I missed this question, and then now they take the approach to, now I need a little bit more help.
Yeah,
Crystal. Yeah.
I'm just trying my best out here, just doing my part, really.
No, you're doing your part. I'm trying to stay on these questions, but Krista, I want to say, please let me know. I know it's going to work out with those teachers with the piloting, because I've watched it happen so many times. It doesn't, whatever you classify a student as, like once they get into the ownership, it's amazing things that happen.
Yes.
Oh man. Okay. So we've heard some great things, but can we dive a little into maybe some challenges that you faced when you because this is not on everybody's menu. This is not a Starbucks. This is not on everybody's Starbucks. This is something that takes a while to happen.
Yep.
And it's challenging sometimes because it's easier to have more control over it. How you instruct the students and how you respond to the students. So what are some challenges that you face with, implementing in these ideas, and, how did you stick to your core values, and how did your core values guide you?
Woo! People don't like change. They want to keep doing what they're doing, even when it don't work.
You're right.
And I'm the same way. Like, okay, let's take the gym, for instance, right? So we might want to feel a certain way. We might want our body to look a certain way, whatever, right? Yeah. And we know that going to the gym makes us feel better. It makes us, right. But we don't want to because it's change, or we've got to fit it in or whatever. Yeah. So we just don't. And then a month later, we're like, dang, I feel like crap because I haven't been to the gym, right? So it's kind of like that, where I feel like that's probably my biggest challenge, is getting folks to change, because when you've been doing something for a long time or whatever, you've got plans for it, right? So it takes you less time to incorporate whatever you're trying to incorporate. And teachers don't have a lot of time. I don't care what anybody says out here. Teachers are struggling to find minutes to pee during the day, right. Let alone, you know what I mean? Let alone anything else. And that's why I say, like, I walk around my building a lot. I'm very present. And if a teacher is like, can I go to the bathroom real quick? Absolutely, you can. And that gives me a minute just to talk to the kids, right? But I just feel like the biggest challenge has been saying, without killing people's spirit, you've been doing this for X amount of years and you've seen the same results. Let's try something different, right? And so depending on who you're talking to, and your approach can't be the same with everyone. I could say that to a couple of my teachers and they'd be like, I know, Miss Watson, tell me, let me know. You know what I mean? But then there's some of my teachers where I've got to kind of like schmooze it in. And I'm not talking about necessarily my teachers at Rockdale. It could have been my teachers at Reezy Price when I was there. Shout out Reezy Price, love y'all. Or even as, a coach, when I was coaching, I had to tell teachers like, hey, how long have you been doing this? Right? Because one thing in the news, it's been in the news, Cincinnati Public Schools, we worked wonders in math after the pandemic. Yeah. We saw some of the highest growth in the country. And that was hard work of the mathematics department, which consisted of 4 of us, 4 people for 65 schools. So it was hard work, but we were strategic about it. We were systemic about it. We were systematic about it. And we looked at every single piece of it and evaluated it as we went. And it was hard work. I cried some days. I wanted to quit some days. So I always take myself back to remember that when I'm trying to get folks to do something different. I'm like, yo, when I had to do something different and when I stepped into classrooms and I noticed that not everybody has the same values that I do or walks into the classroom with the same mindset about our babies, that's another big challenge is mindset. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't feel like my Black kids can learn and they can't be genius, you cannot work with me.
Can't be productive.
That is number one for me. You've got to have a mindset of our kids can. I can teach you anything else. We can work together. We can collectively work on anything except for that. If you do not believe my babies can, you got to go.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely. That's a non-negotiable.
That is the non-negotiable. But I just feel like, the biggest hurdles are adapting to change and then mindsets around students, especially students that are historically marginalized, students that have complex trauma, students that are experiencing poverty, because I'll hear poor kids all the time. I'm like, they're not poor, they're experiencing poverty. It is a systemic issue. It is not what they are. It's what they're experiencing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's for sure. I want to drop in my co-host right here, Phoenicia. Yeah. She has another question right here. I'm just going to claim you as my co-host. She said, we're going to drop a question up here. And I think you've kind of answered that in somewhat, why do you feel teachers are so resistant?
I've actually asked that question to myself over and over again. And just through observation, I found a few things. One, they don't feel like they can do it because they're not supported.
Ooh.
That's a big thing.
Facts. Yeah.
Leaders don't want to admit it, but I'm telling you right now, my boss right now is the deputy superintendent, Dr. Alicia Smith. And let me just tell you, I can call her at any moment of any day. And she's popping up and she's making sure that everything that I need is going to be lined up so that I can make sure I take care of my babies. That is the leader that I aspire to be. I aspire to be a leader that can walk into a space, speak to a teacher, speak to not even just a teacher, my paras, they make my building run as well. My custodian, my kitchen staff, anybody can come to me and say, Miss Watson, I can't do my job effectively because XYZ. And I'm going to say, what support do you need? Well, I'm not really sure. Okay, let me come observe and make some conjectures and let me make sure that I get you the support that you need. And guess what? I'm going to get the support for them. So I feel like that is one reason why folks are resistant is because they feel like they can't do it. I think the second thing that folks are resistant about is they're scared to look like they don't know.
Yep.
Because the teaching profession has been so belittled and just we're just beating teachers over the head, acting like they're glorified babysitters. And I'm like, teachers are mothering, they're psychologists, they are nurses, they're all the things. So give them some grace and allow them to be able to make mistakes without them thinking that their job is on the line. So those are the biggest things that I've noticed and that has come up. I have yet to meet very many teachers, and I can probably count on one hand, that just didn't want to. They're like, I don't want to do this because I just don't want to. It's usually I'm scared that I'm going to make a mistake and that I'm going to be in trouble. With these standardized tests looming over our head. And honestly, in Ohio, in Cincinnati Public, there's no bonus tied to testing. There's
Yeah.
there's nothing tied to testing.
Yeah, no, it's-
So, but our teacher, there's so much emphasis on it just nationwide. It's
Yeah.
not that our district does anything, egregious with it, but there's just this big push for testing, and teachers aren't allowed to be creatives anymore.
Right.
So when they do get creative, they're scared that they're going to be in trouble.
Did I did I mess up the pacing?
I was not your pacing girl. I would be like, I am where I am.
Oh, yeah, I love it because what in the tone that you said it, and I saw you move. I saw you move your head just like that. So you just kind of back up. Okay, all right. You leave it alone. You do your hand like you just leave it alone. It ain't the day.
Where I am.
It ain't the day. Yeah, for sure. Oh man, and to hear this is what school systems need. When you talk about support is, there may be some type of financial support where you may be pushing some type of dollars to your particular school, but one action that I think is just super important is listening.
Oh,
I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to listen. What's going on? All right, just listen. Hear me out. Just hear me out.
yeah.
Look a little crazy. Just hear me out and let me get it out. So I think as leaders, as you look at the district personnel, that's powerful.
That's been a learning curve for me though, Tony, because I'm a fixer. I want everybody to have what they want, what they need, and fix. So I had to train myself to stop thinking about ways that I'm fixing each sentence, each thing that they're sharing with me, and just like putting down my pen. Cause I used to be like, okay, what's wrong? And have my pen out and and now I'm just like, okay, let's talk. Today I had a teacher, she just came back from maternity leave. Shout out to Mrs. Harvey. She was in my office and we just were chopping it up so that she knew what was going on as she returned. And I just sat there like this, like, okay, yeah, and just, it's a learned skill to just sit, listen, and you might not have an answer right then. You might have to say, let me think about that and I'll get back to you. Right. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, and that's like this podcast because I'm going to go back and listen to them all, but I got to go back and listen to it because there were so many what I call life gems, hope and encouragement for your week in this podcast that really needs a deeper depth to the words that were spoken because we don't have these conversations, or nor do we have the time to have the conversations that enrich us. So yeah, definitely shout out. This has been marvelous. As we wrap up, what lasting impact do you hope to leave in math education or in leadership?
Ooh. I think the impact in math that I want to leave is that it's possible. It's possible for everybody. I would love for folks to not walk in rooms and say, I'm not a math person. I would love for them to feel like they could say I'm not a math person, but they can say I can still do math. It's just it's not my favorite subject. Right. Yeah. But when we hear I'm not a math person, it's like self-defeating. Yeah. So I want to leave a legacy of like belonging in math. I want everybody to feel like they can walk in and find space for themselves and their culture and their ways of knowing, epistemologies in the classroom. In leadership, I want to lead. I want to leave a legacy of, I want to walk away from each position that I do, right? And I don't know what my future holds. I'm trying to get really good at what I'm doing right now, right? Yeah. And I want to leave every position that I hold, knowing that someone or someone's, right, multiple people, were impacted by something that I either did or heard or said to them. And accolades don't mean anything to me. I don't care about cameras. I don't care about accolades. They're, whatever. I really want to see the change and not hear it. right? I want to see the students that come through Rockdale going forward, seeing them feel like they belong, having pride in coming there. The teachers are excited to see them. I want to see my old school Reezy Price. I want to see the continuation of like, merging cultures and things like that. So belonging, I think that's what it comes down to. I want to leave a legacy of belonging in mathematics and in schools.
That's awesome. Awesome. So usually what we do at the end is we have a 2-minute warning. So this is I ain't got that yet. So you got the first 2-minute warning. What's going to happen is you got the last couple of minutes here. Just, feel free to share after that. I'll close it out. And that's the end. So you got it, ma'am. You have the floor. And let me know and I'll jump back on. So you got the floor.
Whew. I don't even need 2 minutes. I'm just going to, this is the call to action. Get started. Get started wherever you are. If you're starting from page 1, you start small and you do just the smallest, most basic things. For leaders, that might be just listening. It might be taking a step back and putting your pen down like I did, right? While you're listening to your teachers. If you're a teacher, it might be asking your students what they think about your teaching and getting feedback. Start from where you are. And it's never too late to hone your skills, recognize your opportunities, and reach out to your collective to leverage their strengths, because that is exactly what Tony said. Exactly what you said resonated with me about, as a team, as a collective, you'll never know the weakest one because we'll always be lifting each other. So get started. Get started.
Awesome. Crystal, I appreciate you so much. I'm going to drop you in the background. Don't leave so quickly.
I won't.
Okay, well, good deal. So I'm going to drop you in the background real quick. Hey, listen, guys, I thank y'all so much for coming on, man. This was a wholesome conversation. And when you have conversations around transformation, it's not just the fuzzy feelings that you have. Iron sharpens iron. And this conversation, I didn't miss it. You just kind of pick people and you're like, this is it. And what it did for me is what I hope it does for you. It not just motivates you, it calls you to go into action. Guys, I thank you so much for viewing this podcast show. Share this with a friend, a buddy. This is going to light a fire under you. You have impact. You make a difference in a child's life. Thank you for stopping by to visit with us. You all have a great one.